On the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, China has reiterated its calls for a political resolution to the conflict, as Beijing comes under increasing pressure from Washington and its allies over its expanding ties with Moscow. Friday saw the release of a position paper from China's foreign ministry, which reiterated the country's opposition to the use of nuclear weapons and calls for the restart of peace negotiations and the lifting of unilateral sanctions. The 12-point plan is a part of Beijing's most recent attempts to position itself as a neutral peace broker, as it juggles its deteriorating relations with the West and its no-limits relationship with Moscow as the war drags on. No one benefits from conflict or war. To avoid fanning the flames and escalating tensions and stop the crisis from getting worse or even spiraling out of control, all parties must remain calm and show restraint, the paper said. By refusing to acknowledge the nature of the conflict, it has so far refrained from using the word invasion, and by supporting Moscow diplomatically and economically, Beijing's claim to neutrality has been severely undermined. Additionally, Chinese officials have denied allegations that they are considering offering Russia deadly military support, which has alarmed Western officials. Many of China's standard talking points, such as urging both sides to pick up the peace talks, are reiterated in the policy document. It added that China will play a constructive role, without providing any additional information, and stated that dialogue and negotiation are the only practical solutions to the Ukraine crisis. Furthermore, despite stating that sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of all countries must be effectively upheld, Russia's violation of Ukrainian sovereignty is not mentioned in the document. The language in the document seems to be primarily directed at the West. The paper stated that the Cold War mentality should be dropped in a thinly veiled criticism of the United States. Military bloc expansion or strengthening should not be used to increase regional security. It stated, apparently echoing Moscow's position that the West instigated the war through the expansion of NATO, that the legitimate security interests and concerns of all countries must be taken seriously and addressed appropriately. It also seems to be critical of the extensive economic sanctions put in place against Russia by the US and other Western nations. The statement read, "Unilateral sanctions and intense pressure cannot resolve the issue, they only produce new issues. In order to contribute to de-escalating the Ukraine crisis, relevant countries should stop abusing unilateral sanctions and long-arm jurisdiction against other nations." The US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the war could end tomorrow if Russia stopped attacking Ukraine and withdrew its forces. American officials swiftly criticized the paper. According to Sullivan, who spoke to CNN, "My initial response to it is that it could stop at point 1, which is to respect the sovereignty of all nations. Russia wasn't under attack from Ukraine. NATO wasn't going after Russia. Russia was not being attacked by the US. This was a conflict that Putin voluntarily started." According to Reuters, Jorge Toledo, the European Union's ambassador to China, stated to reporters at a briefing in Beijing that China's position paper was not a peace proposal, and that the EU is studying the paper closely. While Ukraine praised the position paper as a good sign, it urged China to take additional action. Ukraine's chargé d'affaires to China's Anna Lishchinska stated at the same briefing in Beijing that China should do everything in its power to stop the war, restore peace in Ukraine, and urge Russia to withdraw its troops. She noted that Kyiv was not consulted prior to the paper's release and said, "In neutrality, China should talk to both sides. Russia and Ukraine, and now we can see China is not talking to Ukraine." In an effort to portray Beijing as a responsible peace negotiator during a diplomatic charm offensive in Munich last week, top diplomat Wang Yi first discussed the position paper there. Wang met with Putin on Wednesday during his final stop in Moscow on his European tour. As Wang entered the meeting space, Putin extended his arms in greeting and declared that relations between Russia and China were reaching new milestones. Relations between Russia and China are progressing as anticipated in prior years. As he sat next to Wang, Putin told reporters, "Everything is progressing and changing. As we have stated time and time again, cooperation between the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China in the international sphere is crucial for maintaining world peace. The two nations frequently experience crisis and chaos, but there are always opportunities in a crisis," according to Wang. "To further strengthen our comprehensive strategic partnership," Wang said, "this necessitates that we identify changes more voluntarily and respond to the changes more actively.